Hello, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending where you are. Welcome to Connect Africa. I hope you all have a good weekend. So a lot is happening in the continent. So we kind of picked for tonight to talk about the Gabon's President Nguema, the transitional president of Gabon, his visit to Uganda, where he met President Museveni and the whole officials. So he was there for 3 days visit. It was a private visit. I really don't know when it is to heads of states what it means private visit as opposed to official visit. But it was interesting because 3 days a lot for the heads of state to be away from his country and his nation, and he's just a transitional government. Uh, so to analyze that, we have here our Kwame. Kwame, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mahlet, and thank you everyone who is watching us, and of course supporting Connect Africa. We are really glad to be with you all the time and share this information, update you on what is happening on the continent, and of course also what is happening across the globe in relationship, to what is happening in Africa. How does it affect the African continent, of course, as Malet has mentioned today. We've been following the country of Gabon. If you are out there and you are in the diaspora also and you've been following, what's happening on the continent, we had a coup, Malet, was it last year, right? It was last year, I think, when the coup
Yeah.
happened, and then Rice Ngwema came into power, right?
Yes. It was the
Yeah,
last of those old coups that was happening in the continent. Although the
yeah,
others are uncomparable with what happened in Gabon, but yeah, it's the
yeah.
same way.
Yeah. So of course, questions arose. Bryce Ngwema, as someone who removed Ali Bongo. Of course, President Ali Bongo was almost incapacitated, but he was still insisting that he's supposed to stay in power. Of course, which was controversial, of course. But we know what happens in the continent, especially when some of these heads of state are supported by imperialism. We have, for example, people like the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya, who's more than 90 years and he can barely walk or even understand where he is. But because he's supported by France, he is in power. So Ali Bongo too was in power and he was almost incapacitated. He's sick, but he was insisting that he's supposed to stay as the president of Gabon. Gabon is a very small country, of course, in the central part of the African continent. I wish we could show the map itself. It's very important to always have a picture of our continent. I think that would have been very good. It's a very small country, but with a lot of resources, of course, a lot of timber. I think with some iron ore, and also they have a lot of oil for a country which is just 2.5 million people. Huge oil deposits, and is one of the richest country. Even on the African continent, with almost a GDP per capita of more than $12,000, $10,000 to $12,000. So it is actually a very rich country. But unfortunately, because the system that is being run there is the capitalist system, which is guided by the interests of the United States, which has a lot of interests. The United States has a lot of interests in the country, and France also, especially in the oil industry. Total has been in the country for a very long time, ever since the 60s. So there we are. Last year we had a coup which brought Bryce Ngwema after overthrowing Ali Bongo, and then he was in the military. He became the president. So here he is. We have been watching him. We want to understand which side is he. He has not identified with the three Sahel states, who are maybe known as rogue states currently, by the other people who are accustomed to power on the African continent, people like in the ECOWAS, who are known to talk about democracy as if they are the champion of democracy. So anyone who wants to destabilize this current neo-colonial order, they don't look at him very well. So they named the three Sahel states as rogue states, as people who are destabilizing, the region. So Bryce Ngwema has not joined this group. He has not been able to identify himself with them. And of course, this has left many, even in the Pan-African world, questioning where does he lie? What is he about? It is just recently that he started making some moves, inviting president of Dangote Industries, when Dangote, of course, was having challenges with Nigeria, which we have covered extensively. We have covered Dangote's challenges extensively. And also, we see that he now decided to visit Uganda after inviting President Dangote. He is now visiting Uganda. So the questions we are asking today: does he want to endear himself to the African people? Does he want to be looked at as somebody who is pro-African, who has the African interest? And even I remember in one of the speeches when he came to power, he mentioned that we, the Bantu, because the people who are living around this area of Gabon, uh, they are Bantu people. They are part of the Bantu, speaking people, Bantu speaking, languages. So he mentioned that the Bantu people have been marginalized and stuff like that when he came to power. So these are some of the statements which he used. Therefore, he wanted to stabilize the country. Of course, that was his claim. So the questions now, which we want to ask: what is he up to with his visit in Uganda? What is he trying to achieve? So these are the questions that we are here to ask ourselves and deliberate on. With Mahlet here. If you are out there in the audience and you wanna, make a contribution, I think Mahlet, you allow people to come in and make a contribution. Those ones who feel like, right? Can you hear me, Mahlet? Okay.
Yes. Mm.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, so I think I'll give the microphone back to you, Marit.
Yeah, so I think you made an introduction of what Gabon as a country is in terms of natural resource for those who don't know, and how President Nguema came to power. So that's off the table. Uh, but yeah, to start with, there are presidents and the heads of states that comes through a coup. As I always say, there is good coup and bad coup. So for him, it's just a continuation of Ali Bongo. There's nothing new in terms of cutting away from the colonial past of Gabon. He made his visit, I think his first visit was outside of the continent. He was in France, all dressed up like the French, this
Yeah,
Republican guy or whatever. Um, but yeah, so just to start with this kind of heads of states, like some noises are made. I remember Ali Bongo was saying from the rooms that where he was tied up, "Oh, make some noise for me." And most of the African media platforms, the Pan-African media platforms, including ourselves, have made noise not for Ali Bongo to be released, but questioning really the credibility and how much Pan-African this leader, meaning Nguema, is. But what do you think? Heads of states comes like that, and then for some time there's some kind of noise. But as long as the West wants that heads of state in the place, after some time it's forgotten and business as usual. And he just start, his visit. Now we are here to talk about his visit to Uganda. How do we deal with such kind of thing in Africa? So once they are there, okay, there's nothing can be done, and we just have to judge them, uh, examine them by their daily works, by their moves, or what, or things can be reversible.
Yeah, so really it's a difficult question. What you're asking is really a difficult question because honestly, all the leaders on the African continent, we can't group them, we can't put them in one group, right? And say, okay, this one is like this, or maybe to say that all of them are in one group, we can't put them all in one group. Uh, because they all don't stand for the same thing. Like we see the Sahel states, you have about three leaders there who are very pro-African in their outlook. So you have that group of leaders who at least Pan-Africanism can work with. You may think of these guys as those Pan-Africanism can work with. And then you have those who are really nationalistic. I think that's the right word. And I think that people like Museveni, they fall into that category. And these nationalistic leaders, they don't necessarily, understand the need for the unification of the continent itself. They may understand things at a regional level, all right? For example, the regional economic communities, like, East African community, you see that people like President Seven, they talk about a lot of, about these things. And, so people like that, they have their own group. So you have the other ones we said who are in the category of the AES, the Sahel states, Mali, Niger, and Burkina. Then you have that group of which I think Museveni, where Museveni is, people like Museveni, where he is, even though he has some Pan-African rhetoric, but he's just a nationalist leader. So they concentrate, and he's in the same class like people like President Nyerere, right? They are in that class that even though they are nationalistic, to a certain extent, they don't really understand or appreciate very much the advantages of the continent being unified. So for Bryce Ngwema, so these leaders, the one I'm talking about, the nationalistic leaders, you see that they visit the West and then they come home, they try to defend some of the interests, all right? But of course, if the pressure uh, comes to bear so much from the West, that the Western interests are so overwhelming, sometimes they give in. They can even sell out, you know, their fellow African brothers, or even their fellow African presidents. And we saw this thing with the President Museveni, that he sold out, people like, Gaddafi. All right. He sold him out to the United States. So you could see that uh, Bryce Ngwema too could be in that category. All right. Could be in that category. And so his visit uh, could be looked at in that way, that he wants to copy that same behavior of, President Museveni. Now, this is not to mean that President Museveni has not made, he has not had some achievements. Actually, I believe that he has been much more productive during these years when he's in power, during his last years. But the first years, like the first 20 years, he was not very productive for the country, in a sense that most of the neoliberal doctrine, he was pushing it on the people and on the country. But when it came to really tangible Pan-African issues, he never, participated to a large extent, or even pushed the country to adopt that Pan-African lifestyle. You may say, like adopting it in education. Like when you see Nkrumah, he was there for just a few years, like 8 years. But the seed he planted in Ghana, that seed is still there, is still existent in Ghana. And even when you come, you can feel it, that the Ghanaians, even though the neoliberal system had come to take over, but you can see that they are still pro-African. The Ghanaians, they understand Africa to an extent which a lot of other Africans, many other Africans don't understand. Not all the Africans, but a lot of other Africans, which they don't understand it. Even you could talk of Nigeria itself, that the Ghanaians, they appreciate Africa, much more better than even the Nigerians, for example. And all this is because of Nkrumah and what he planted just for the small period in which he was there. So you can see that President Seven, he also could be in that category, which is confusing. And Bryce Ngwema could be moving in that direction of wanting to copy Museveni, because Museveni may be, for himself, he may be looking at this as a being a pragmatic, that he plays the West and then he plays on the continent and knows how to stay in power, has to maintain himself in power. And that's what I'm seeing with also Bryce Ngwema, that he wants to adopt. It looks like he wants to copy, what Museveni is doing. Ask him, what have you been doing? How have you been doing it? Maybe to learn, from him. But aside that, also, I think that President Seven also is looked at as, as an elder statesman, of course, because he has been around for more than 38 years as a president. He's almost approaching 40 years, right? So these guys may want to learn from him how to hold the power, how to talk to people, how to talk to the Western world so that you can bear this pressure and all that. Yeah, so that is the group which is very difficult to a certain extent to understand. Actually, the nationalists can be very stubborn, to a larger extent. If you look at what happened to Nkrumah, during the Casablanca and Monrovia group, the Monrovia group, which was in Liberia, of course, Monrovia in Liberia, then in Casablanca in Morocco, the Nkrumah's Casablanca group encountered a lot of challenges in unifying Africa simply because of the nationalists, because they think that they know it, they know the ground, all right, what is happening on the ground. And this is this can be also very dangerous, that they want to look at every detail of what is happening on the ground, the tribes, how they behave and stuff like that. So they will give you all this data to justify why you should not unify at some point. So they can be really stubborn on one side. Now, on the other side, of course, we've described Ngwema and President Seven, they are in that category. And on the other side, you have people who don't care at all. And for them, they completely have sold out. Okay, they have sold out the interests of the African people. They don't care really what happens. Okay, and of course that's the group where you find the Nana Addo's group, most of the group, the Ivory Coast guy Ouattara, where you find people like Tinubu. All these guys really, they don't care about anything Pan-African apart from the lip service which they give it. For example, if they go to the African Union, so these are the groups which I think that we can talk of. And of course, we have those ones in the northern part of the continent, like Morocco and Egypt and all these countries which have some of the Arab roots of the Arabs. They may completely not know even what is going on, in the Pan-African world, apart from attending the African Union summits and here and there. But Bryce Ngwema, I think, is in that group where M7 is, where it is confusing. People like the president of South Africa. What is his name? I forgot, the ANC guy. Not Jacob Zuma. The president of South Africa, Mahlet.
Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa.
Yeah, Cyril Ramaphosa. So on one side, it behaves as if he's an African. On the other side, he's on the side of imperialism. So you can see that these guys, they have the characteristics. They combine the characteristics of imperialism, and then at the same time they want to show that they are really African on one side. So they are kind of confusing. So I think that is the class in which we can put Bryce Ngwema.
Okay. Thank you. Now, although you have said why he may have visited, Museveni, because, okay, one, he's elder, second, maybe that is a person, from different categories that we have, heads of states. Maybe that's what he wants to emulate. But why Uganda? Why not starting from the neighboring countries? Like, also not so much happening. There's Republic of Congo, there's Cameroon, there's Equatorial Guinea. uh, yeah. Is there anything that you would like to add? Why Uganda?
Yeah, I think that Uganda,
Like
of
you
course,
have
is.
said, a couple of things, but if there is anything new, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think that Uganda has made some achievements. Like I mentioned, there's a need for him to tap into the experience of Museveni of dealing with chaos. President Museveni has been successful at dealing with a lot of chaos in the country, so he may need to tap into that. Dealing with political opponents, calming down opposition, controlling the opposition, that may be necessary. But also, I think Uganda has had relative economic growth and industries. It has some level of sufficiency as a country when it comes to the economy. It has some level of self-sufficiency when it comes to the economy. Apart from, I think, the financial sector, which is controlled by foreigners in the country, the other sectors, they have tried to be indigenous. Apart from the industries, the approach of the president has been that he has tried to, have a lot of foreigners in the economy. The foreigners, of course, they control the economy, but maybe for strategic reason, which I don't understand. He may have maybe strategic reasons. So this approach has helped the president to have an economy which has grown for the last 10 years, for example, by an average of 7%. And actually, the economy has doubled in the last 12 years. The economy has more than doubled since 2012 to 2022. 2012, the economy was around $25 billion. By 2022, the economy had doubled to $50 billion. All right, from 25 to $50 billion. So you can see that there's some lessons there maybe that he may need to learn when it comes to growing an economy, because you know Gabon is almost the same size as Uganda and Ghana. The country is that big, but Uganda has more than is coming almost to 50 million people, and Gabon, with all those resources and land, it has only 2.5 million people, and that is why actually the imperialists have succeeded at exploiting it. So I find that he may come to seek on how to indigenize that. So Museveni has succeeded in localizing the industries to try to add value, as you are seeing that he has been fighting back a lot when it comes to adding value. And one of the examples, of course, is the oil industry. That Shell had come to Uganda when Uganda had discovered oil in 2006. It had discovered commercial oil, and it wanted to do things which it is doing in Nigeria. That is Shell Petroleum, to exploit. So the president told them that they should wait for him. He should come back. They should come back when he has built capacity, because he did not have capacity, as in human capacity within the country, to handle the oil industry. So he had to ask the people. He explained this, I think, in one video, somewhere. He had to ask people in the ministries, in the different ministries in the government, whether there is some Ugandans who know about the oil industry, even around the world or even within the country, so that they can come and advise him on how to handle the oil industry. So he never got anyone who knows about the oil industry. Not a lot of Ugandans within the country. So what the person he found there was a Ghanaian who works at the Uganda, at the Central Bank of Uganda. There's one Ghanaian who works there, and that Ghanaian is helping with the buying of fuel from outside. So he also did not know a lot about the oil industry when it comes to exploration and drilling. So he built up that capacity over time, brought in, sent, put up some institutions in the country to teach about oil and gas, sent some students were sent to England and all these countries, Norway, to learn about the oil industry. So they came back. So these people have formed the backbone of Uganda's oil industry. So when he was ready with this, then he called Shell back. So Shell, when they called them back, and the man has now the capacity and the advisors, the Shell, they said that they don't want to come now. Said that, yeah. So he was patient. So until now, that Uganda is just coming now to exploit its resources, but it actually signed some of the best agreements, oil agreements in the world, because Uganda is going to get more than 70% of of the earnings from its oil. So that's how good their contracts in Uganda are. So you may find that Bryson Nguema may need to tap into this. How does it do restructuring? So you may find that he didn't want to move rapidly, maybe renegotiate the contracts and stuff like that. He may want to tap into the old man, how to deal with his situation in the country. Maybe if he's thinking about, let us assume he's thinking about of renegotiating the contracts in because there's Americans in there. I think there's Chevron. It is either Chevron or ExxonMobil, but Total is also there. Total
Yeah,
Energy is there in Gabon. It
totally.
has been there for a long time, but I think Chevron also is there offshore in Gabon, because the Americans are really there within the country. So he may be, wanting to get understanding of how to deal with this kind of complicated situation from the old man, because the old man, the old man knows better. And of course, we say that there's a relationship also, that these are also Bantu. Within Gabon, you have a lot of Bantu people, and Uganda also a lot of Bantu people. So they are the same people, in that case, that there's really no difference, unless you don't want to look at it that way. You don't want to be Pan-African or purely African. That is when you will look at it differently. Yeah, so he may want to tap into that understanding. So I believe that these are some of the reasons. So there's that self-sufficiency in industrialization. So he may want to do that to help also the population in Gabon to gain some of the benefits of the oil industry. Maybe how do we redistribute? Of course, this does not mean that Uganda has been successful at redistributing the wealth, because they are still creating it, but at least they have tried, somehow. So I think that he may want advice on the economy, seriously, and the military part of it also. We saw it, even though he came and visited some industries, like cotton industries. He went and visited a cotton ginnery. Is a factory which turns cotton into clothes, and even he was shown some clothes, some military attire, for military people, the soldiers, which are made in Uganda, clothes which are made in Uganda. So he may want to buy some of that stuff. And of course, he visited the military academy, and he met even the president's brother, because the president's brother is one of the architects of the president's stay in power, who controls things from outside and keeps the ear on the ground to tell him what is happening, in society. So, and of course, he controls the army. So he may want to learn from the army, how to organize the army, because Uganda has been successful professionalizing the army itself. So you may see that he may want to learn how to professionalize the army, so that the army can work with society. And these things he mentioned them, during the press conferences that happened. So industry, economy, and the military, I see that taking, huge chunk of his approach. And of course, foreign policy, how to deal with the imperialist, and all these things he may want to learn from the old man, and how he has, been able to navigate, these difficult waters.
Interesting. Thank you, Kwame, yeah, for that. So I think you have, yeah, he seems very kind of mesmerized by the industries of Uganda, and maybe it's the right stop for him. And yeah, a number of reasons that you have laid out why he went there. But speaking of again this transitional president, do you think it is the right way to start things to do? Like, is he on the right path?
Yeah. So saying whether he's on right path, I think that one is very early to judge. But from the look of things, to me, he looks like he wants to stay in power for a long time, even though he says he's a transitional president. It looks like he wants to stay in power for a long time. When Obasanjo finished his second term, because he came as a military man and later stood for elections. So Obasanjo actually had a vision in Nigeria that he had cleared Nigeria's debt during when his second term was finishing. Nigeria almost had no debt. It had paid off debt, to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, right? And he was looking at building Nigeria in a way. Obasanjo was a visionary actually. He's the one who created almost Dangote, sole-handedly. He created Dangote. So Obasanjo came to Uganda to visit Uganda. And during that period, they had just changed the constitution in Uganda to give Museveni, another term into office. All right. So Obasanjo came and visited Uganda, and he wanted to ask, I think, to inquire from the old man how he was able to do this, so that maybe he can also go back and attempt the same and the same tactics. But when he went back home, of course, it did not work out uh, that way. It did not work out as he wanted, and he left power. And of course, this also speaks to the limitations of the neoliberal democratic system of the West, which is being imposed on the African
But
people.
out of
That
curiosity, I always thought Obasanjo is older than Museveni. Am I wrong?
Yeah, he is, but it doesn't mean that even if you are older than somebody, if somebody has some tricks, you still go in and ask them
In
how they did.
power, yeah. Okay, staying in
Yes.
power.
Yes. Yeah. So that speaks to the limitations of the neoliberal system itself. That you may have good leaders like that to a certain extent. Obasanjo was a good leader, even though of course there was this corruption here and there, within the country, but he cleared Nigeria's debt. He almost all of it. By the time he left, Nigeria almost did not owe the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And he was a visionary. He was, bent on creating an indigenous private sector. Some of the leaders are not really interested in even creating an indigenous private sector, okay? Because this is the thing. I listened to one Pan-Africanist. He's called Omowale Africa. He's from the United States. He's African American. He's African diaspora. All right, and he taught me something, that the company, the creating of corporations, we cannot avoid it. All right. When we are talking about, for example, the so-called socialism, versus capitalism, we have to understand that we cannot avoid the creation of corporations, businesses and companies as a people, as Pan-Africans, if we are building a society. And that is the essence. For example, Ethiopia Airlines, you have, Ethiopia has its own shipping line. And even Nkrumah himself, even Gavi himself was creating these companies, Black Star Line and all these companies he was creating for the black people, because he understood the importance of having your own corporations. China also understood it. The United States East India Company and all these, the British, the United States now is governing the world almost under the power of these companies. Google, Oracle, Yahoo, all these companies, you see, Microsoft, Apple, you can see that you need to be up there. So China also understood this and it created its own. But even Nkrumah also understood it when he came to power. Create Black Star Line, create all these nuclear power plants, shipping, yard, and all these companies, because these people, they understood that the companies are really very important, that you have to create them. You cannot limit yourself and say, me, I'm not going to participate in the capitalist system, but rather the best way is to participate in it at your own terms, right? It is no, it's not that we are not supposed to participate in it, but we are supposed to participate in it at our own terms, just like what we see China, because China right now claims that it is, actually it says, it doesn't claim, but it says that it is a socialistic, country, socialism with Chinese characteristics. All right. So you can see that Obasanjo contributed greatly to that. And he had that vision of creating, African entrepreneurs. And of course, we see the results of what he created. Dangote, who came on to benefit the almost the whole African continent. So you can see that Bryce Ngwema, So when Obasanjo, went to Uganda, he wanted to seek other advice of how he could stay and make more contribution. But because of the neoliberal system, that the constitution in Nigeria was saying 2 years, it could not allow him to stay and make more contribution. And what did we get later on? We got even worse people, Umaru Yaradua, and then Good Luck Jonathan, and then all these ones who have come, wish wash leaders who have come, they're just continuing to destroy. But imagine if Obasanjo was still there in power, probably he would have created more, powerful, business people, and then maybe contribute even to the progress of the African continent, because we see him going across the African continent. And of course, there's other people who say, "Oh, Obasanjo during his era there was a lot of corruption. He's corrupt and stuff like that." We don't rule out that, but of course, it comes to the territory in a society like Nigeria. So Obasanjo came to Uganda, of course, to seek what he did not have. So it's likely that Obiang also, Bryce Ngwema also, he came to Uganda to seek what he doesn't have, what he feels, what he feels that he doesn't have. Yes, I agree with you, the Juma. I respect that you don't agree with me. Of course, I understand. So, but the leaders, many times they are not one-sided. That okay is completely, corrupt, or is only one side. So sometimes they have their own challenges. Like people like Museveni, for example, me, I don't take him as a Pan-Africanist. I don't really, even though a lot of people, when they hear him speak, they think he's a Pan-Africanist. He's not, because this is somebody who has come out on twice, not once, but twice, to dispute Nkrumah's approach to Pan-Africanism and the unification. He say he doesn't believe that unification, is possible on the African continent. That's Museveni what he says. But when you hear his rhetoric, you may think that he's a Pan-Africanist. So I think that he came to seek what he doesn't have, uh, but mostly, with the military, dealing with foreign policy, military organization within the country, dealing with foreign policy, and also, dealing with the opposition. So again, the signs for me, they point to someone who looks like they want to stay around for some time. They want to stay as president for some time within Gabon. So that's at least the signs for me which I can read from the visit. And the fact that you said it was a private visit, it was not an official visit, like that. Maybe he was, he was not invited. So this is what shows you also that if it was a private visit, that means he initiated it. He sent a message to Uganda that he wants to come and visit. He wants to come and make inquiry. He wants, so even the parts he visited, military industries, a couple of industries, and then had meetings with Museveni. So it shows you that he wanted these particular things. These are the things he wanted to take, advice from, information from, and build on.
Very interesting point. Yeah, for me, that is a highlight. So basically, we are seeing what exactly Obasanjo did, in terms of visiting Museveni when he came to power, and that's what Nguema is doing. Yeah, it's very interesting. Once these heads of states visits a military, this and that, and they have no security problem. So you kind of think, okay, what are they heading for? The Juma says Yaradua was the younger of his deputy. So he said this previously. You read it? It says, as a Nigerian who witnessed these events, he attempted to extend the constitution, bribed a lot of parliamentarians, and on his way out, he imposed Yaradua and Jonathan
Yes,
on
yes. I think that's what he was saying, that he did not agree with me. He doesn't agree with my assessment of Obasanjo, President Obasanjo. Of course, I did not say that he's clean. If you've been listening to me, I really said that he had his weaknesses, and even Museveni, bribed the parliamentarians. So what you are seeing is exactly what I'm saying. What you, or the Juma, what you are saying is exactly what myself I'm saying. that Obasanjo went to Uganda to get the tactics of how to extend his stay. So, but that is different from, his contribution. The fact that how you want to, of course, we may have to argue this, that does the means justify the end, you know, so, or does the end justify the means? We may look at it in that way. But he made a contribution to Nigeria. I think that he made a reasonable contribution. He had a vision. That is what that is what I agree with. And I don't think that anybody can dispute that he made a contribution in trying to create an indigenous private sector. Because remember, in some of our assessments that we have made, is that the West in itself has tried even to make sure that in Africa and even the global South, there does not exist a competitive private sector which competes with the Western world. There has been that attempt that the companies which can compete against the West, they completely fight against them to see that they completely don't exist on the African continent or even in the global South. There has been that attempt, but at least he tried. Obasanjo tried. At least the entrepreneurs, which we have currently in Nigeria, who are even contributing to the continent, like Dangote, he came from that lineage. But what took him, like you said, that he wanted to bribe the parliamentarians, to extend the constitution, he took that from Uganda because that's the same strategy which Museveni used. And he went and bribed the whole, parliament to lift term limits, on the presidency in Uganda. Even though the presidency, even though the constitution, of course, in Uganda was written under Museveni, the 1995 constitution, that's the one which is running. He was there. He came in 1986. So they wrote the constitution, and so that is what happened. But like our assessment we made, it is very difficult right now to see a Pan-African leader on the African continent. It is very difficult right now. It's very difficult. Even Obasanjo himself, I didn't say that he was a Pan-Africanist. I never said he was a Pan-Africanist. But he had, some, contribution there. But he was not a Pan-Africanist. So there's never really, I've not seen a Pan-Africanist leader on the continent to the level of Nkrumah, Gaddafi, and Thomas Sankara. These people who really pushed aggressively and say we have to unify the continent. So most of them, they are reluctant in their approach, that they are fearful. Okay, there's this fear of the capitalist system and the West, the imperialistic countries, that all of them, they pull back and they sort of like relax, when it comes to the approach. Yeah. So, but that's the assessment. That's how I see people like Obasanjo. But then I think Bryce Ngwema is also going into that direction of survival. He's going into the survival mode because he thinks that it's about surviving in power, and therefore he wants to copy the others who have managed to survive for some time in power.
Okay, so we are now shifting to Nigeria, our discussion from Gabon to Uganda. But we always respect the view of our audience here. Osier has also strengthened his views. His comments are strengthening the Juma, I believe. In my view, Murata Mohammed, Obasanjo boss was, in my view, the last.
Mahlet, I think let the Juma come and tell us about Obasanjo. I've put the link in the comment section. Have you seen it? Come post comment.
Okay. So
Did you see it? I've
yeah,
put the screen.
I see it. So if you
Yes.
want to join us, Dejuma, you are welcome. But I understand some people, they might just stay one to behind. But yeah, it's open.
Yes, for 1-2 minutes. If you want to say something, we put the link in the comment.
Ted Rose not asking, but he's suggesting maybe. Why don't you said Thomas Sankara only, in Nkrumah and Gaddafi, so you're not mentioning Haile Selassie.
So I think Haile Selassie was sort of, he was a Pan-Africanist in a sense. that he provided mediation. You know, he was a voice of reason when the continent was sort of almost destabilized. All right. And he was somebody who was very good at mobilizing the continent. So of course you can't take away that, you know, contribution from him. Even the OAU itself would not have been formed if it was not for Haile Selassie. That he was able to calm down these agitating forces, these two groups. They,
I
you know,
think
they,
they all have a different contribution. I mean, for me, Haile Selassie and Nkrumah was iconic one because Nkrumah was pushing to the economic freedom, not only as just being independent. Haile Selassie, he's definitely Pan-African. There is no doubt about that. But when it comes to about the struggle, we say Thomas Sankara's struggle was not Emperor Haile Selassie's struggle, you know, it's a struggle to be independent. So, but he has that freedom and territory, and he provided that for the rest of Africans, and he spoke on behalf of them on internet. Ethiopia was the only
yes,
African country member on the face of League of Nations, that is before the United Nations, and it spoke. I mean, until all Africa is free, we are not free. And he also included, I think, Palestine in that.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I think Mallet, you are right with that assessment. I think he is in that class. I think it's Pedro Jamot who brought that up. Yeah, so I absolutely agree. I think he's in that class. I think Haile Selassie is really in that class. Yes, Dejuma.
you need to bring him up, but
Okay,
it's a
he's not.
device is not connected.
Okay,
Uh,
he's not.
why does Bryce want to become president for life? What does he have to offer? I mean, they don't have to offer, they just have to take from people. There's nothing to. But
Yeah.
everybody wants, you know, sometimes I really doubt those, even what we say Pan African, that chair, you know, once you sit on it, nobody wants to leave. And the only person that I saw is Mandela. And even him, I don't know what he agreed before he left prison. So he's the
Uh,
only one I
for
saw.
Mandela, for me, I think that for Mandela, I think that he personally, I think that Mandela could not manage the problems. He saw that the problems were huge, and he needed to rest. He could not deal with those problems. And the Juma, I think you need to log in again because your device is not connecting. It shows you here, but it shows that you are not connected. So you need to try again and make sure that the microphone and the camera is connected, or at least the microphone, even if the camera is not connected. So make sure that all the microphone is allowed on your, on your device, because it looks like the microphone is not connected. In your StreamYard, it will ask you to allow the microphone and the camera to connect, to give permission to the microphone and permission to the go to settings and look for the microphone and the camera and allow them. Then you will be able to get in and speak. Okay. Is there any other person, Mallet? Yeah. So I think that for Bryce, whether he has something to contribute or not, I think that I think that that is too early to judge. It's too early for us to judge whether Bryce has something to contribute or not, and why he wants to stay in power. We have not yet seen him, but from our judgment, that is why we have analyzed for him. You know, we have analyzed him for you, and we put him in a class that at least we have identified that he wants to stay in power. But what he wants to do with that power, we can't judge that for now. We cannot make a conclusion about it until maybe sometime. He's just been there for a year. Of course, we can't pinpoint that this is what he has achieved in that short period. So in that itself, it shows that he's not really much of a
Listen to
president.
this, Kwame. I mean, I really don't think that Nguema has to come to Uganda just to check how to stay in power, because as long as he's obedient of France, which we see he is, I mean, he's guaranteed that he can stay in power.
No,
Why
so
is he thinking?
no, so Mallet, he may have a conflict of interest. He may have some interest for doing something within the country. All right. So this shows you that he doesn't have a clear goal, objective that, okay, I'm going to wage this war, this particular war. This is the reason I came to power. All right. You go to people like Nkrumah, they waged a war for more than 10 years. All right. He was in the trenches after coming back, and he formed a party and he said, I'm going to lead the African continent. And even when he was a student, he had all this, in his mind, that I'm going to make a contribution to Africa's liberation. We have to liberate Africa. So he had all this mind until when he came back to Ghana and he waged a war for 10 years until he reached power. So even he set out immediately on independence when Ghana gets its independence. He set out and said that independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it's linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. You see? So he immediately set out what he wanted to do, and he announced that we have to dedicate ourselves to a more intense war right now. All right? We have to rededicate ourselves to a more serious struggle of liberating other parts of Africa, but also the reconstruction of Africa. And he appealed to the people that the people should stand behind. You need to stand behind us and give us support, because what we are going after is not easy. So you can see that this is somebody who had a clear goal. But for Bryce, this going to France, and then he may have this double.
Kwame, sorry, before you start, don't forget your point. But the Juma has a problem of connecting his mic, and most of the time I see this on you also, but you fix it. So can you share what he has to do?
No, he has to go to settings. When you go to settings, go to audio, and you select a microphone. All right. If you are using a YouTube device, if you are using an Android device, the browser will ask you to allow the microphone if you are using an Android device. But if you are using a laptop, again, you will be asked to allow the microphone to access, to allow the browser to access the microphone. So that's the only problem which you are facing. Access to microphone and the camera.
He's on his laptop.
Yeah, if he's on the laptop, it is the computer now. He has to go to the left side. There's a place where there's something like a padlock. All right, on the left in the browser, at the top of the browser where there's the URL on the left. On top left of the browser, you will see there's a padlock, and then you click on it. It will drop down. You will see camera and microphone and sound, and then you say allow. If it's camera, drop down, allow. If it's microphone, drop down, allow, and then it will be able to allow the laptop to come on. Yeah. So what I was saying is that Mahlet, what you said, if he wants to stay in power, all right. I think the Zoom has been able to get in.
Yeah, just keep in mind that Ose also asked, what did President Nguema envisioned for Gabon?
Okay. So what Nguema. Yeah. So first, let's first mute you. I want to finish this point, and then you will come back in. All right. So for him, Mahlet, your point, which you said, I think he doesn't necessarily need to go to France. All right, because he may have this double consciousness. Like I said, he doesn't have a clear objective of what he's going to achieve. Like in Nkrumah, he was very clear on what he wanted, that he wants to unify Africa. So Nkrumah was in for a long run for a certain reason, that he has to help Africa liberate itself from colonialism, and then he has to unify it. Nkrumah, this was the, utmost objective. For him, this was the pinnacle. He looked at himself as this could be the pinnacle of his achievement as an African or as a president. So he set out on those objectives immediately. Ghana got independence, 1957. 1958, he called the All Africa Conference in Accra and invited all the fighters who are fighting for independence across the African continent. So for Bryce Nguema, he has been there for almost a year. What have you seen that? So he has not done those things. So he may want to learn from these old boys who have been around on the continent on how to stay and how to navigate, how to play both sides. Because if anything, what Museveni succeeds in is playing both sides, playing the foreign forces and playing, domestically, playing the ball domestically, and even in the region, South Sudan, is in Somalia, how to interact with Kenya, and then of course he has some small conflicts with Rwanda, resolve them, and then Democratic Republic of Congo, he has troops in Central African Republic. You can see that he mastered how to play the ball locally within Uganda, regionally, and then to play the foreign power so that they cannot be on him so much and be calling him dictator so much, and then even want to overthrow him. So you can see that it takes his skill, certain level of skill, for you to maintain yourself in power for those years. At the same time, he's trying to make a contribution for the people. So Bryce too may be wanting to make a contribution, but he's not very clear on what kind of contribution he wants to make for his society. So that's why he came to I believe that's the reason why he came to the old man. That's one of the
Well,
reasons.
I disagree. I really don't think he has any. But it's good. Yeah, so welcome, Dejuma. I think we should allow Dejuma to talk.
Hello, welcome, Mahlet and Kwame.
Yes, you're welcome, Dejuma. Nice to hear from you.
Likewise.
Same.
I appreciate the work you guys are doing. It's really needed, and there's another Pan-Africanist channel as well. They're also working with basically boosting the Sahel. I don't know, you've probably seen the African Stream, and then recently there's another young lady who started one talking with the lady. She's from Kenya, collaborating with a brother from Nigeria, and they interviewed the I forgot the South African Pan-Africanists that went and met with President Traore. So they had a discussion. If I remember, I'll put it in the chat next time.
Diaspora, I think is the diaspora. Well, who is it? Dr. Shombori Kwao.
No, not Dr. Not her. ADDI. I'm a member of ADDI. ADDI. Actually, interestingly, ADDI. A couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting, a Zoom meeting, and side note, and the focus of the Zoom meeting was to understand the issue with Kenya, the protesters, and how can the ADDI group leverage the opportunity for the next step? What's the next course of action? And this goes back to the fact that African people, we are never left alone. And so the protesters, because they're leaderless protests, but some of the spokespeople, they came on and talking about their vision and then what next. And believe it or not, in the middle of it, we were hacked into. The meeting was hacked into by white nationalists. I don't call them white supremacists, because they are not supreme. But we were hacked into, and they were using the word, the N-word, and they flooded it with pornography. And then we were able to prevent that, and we proceeded with the meeting, and we got hacked into again. And then eventually we had to shut the meeting down. So we're never alone as Africans. But to talk about Obasanjo holistically, he's trying to do some things across the continent. But if I were to take a step back, right, there's a saying that in the space of public life in Nigeria, he's probably the one person who's benefited the most in the generosity that is the Nigerian state. Literally everything he's become in a public setting have been on the backs of other people's sweat and blood, literally. He came to prominence after the Biafran War. There was a guy who led the Biafran War on the side of the government called they nicknamed him Spider. He was a fierce military guy. So Adekunle is his last name. I can't remember his first name, but he died recently. So he was the one that led the fight, the government, the national fight against the Biafran. But somehow Obasanjo got the glory because Obasanjo was the one who took the surrender. And then eventually Obasanjo became a deputy head of state to Muritala, who, in my view, was probably the last.
Is it Ojuku? Was it Ojuku who was the
No,
leader
no,
of the
yeah, Biafra, but yeah, Ojuku, but Ojuku absconded. Remember Ojuku was a silver spoon man. He grew up. He was a wealthy kid. Ojuku
Yes.
He went to Oxford.
Yeah, I
His
could hear
family
even his English. I
Yeah,
could
he
hear
went to
even
Oxford.
his English was very clean, sort of
Exactly.
like.
Exactly. He went to Oxford. He was a rich kid, joined the military, and as soon as the war started, he left. But and then so Obasanjo became the after the war, Muritala took over. Muritala, in my view, was probably the last Pan-Africanist, in terms of Nigerian leadership. He was summarily assassinated because he was responsible for funding what's his name, the guy from Cuba, I forgot now, Castro and Che Guevara's fight in
Yeah.
Angola was funded by Muritala because Nigeria was fighting on all cylinders across the continent, trying to actualize independence for different African countries. And that's
Yeah,
one
it was
thing
even
today.
financing. It was financing also South Africa, the struggle in
Yes.
South Africa.
So that's one thing today and this is what saddens me in the sense that, like I said, we are constantly listening to, we are the oldest people on the planet, and we are the people that knows and understand the least about the world we live in. Nigeria sacrificed a lot for the continent, but yet, there are a lot of people, even Nigerians, don't even know about these things. And there are a lot of Africans who didn't know that, there's a lot of blood and resources that Nigerians shared to free a lot of these African people that talk trash, but that's nearer there. Well, anyway, Obasanjo became Muritala's deputy. So, the State Department executed or assassinated Muritala. Obasanjo became the head of state. And again, slowly, so that's, and then over time, he did some things, as a military, because military head of state, one of the things I give him credit for, he organized the Festac 77, which was a festival where people of African descent globally, they descended on Lagos, to celebrate, being African, and that was probably one of the things that started the boost for Abiola, who later became one of the richest men in the world, But at the end of the day, Obasanjo was supposed to conduct an election. The election was fraught, and he ended up going to a candidate in the north. I got to take a step back. I know one time we talked about how do you define Pan-Africanism. And one of the things that is problematic for me, or in my view, is that you cannot be a Pan-African or Pan-Africanist and be a bigot. You cannot be a religious bigot. You cannot be an ethnic bigot. You cannot be a bigot of any form. If you subscribe to those, I do not consider you as a Pan-African. You're something else other than a Pan-African, right? Because African are not one thing, right? So anyway, so this Shagari, who's from the northern, he was not interested in being a president. He was a teacher, and he contested to be a senator. He won his Senate seat. He just wanted to go to be in the National Assembly and be a senator for his people. And Mr. Obasanjo grabbed him because Obasanjo is always looking for people he can control. So you put this guy in power. The guy was not ready to be in power. And the man just picked people, and corruption ensued, and his government was badly run. And then in the following election in 1983, badly run, and then which he eventually brought the Buhari administration. The Buhari administration, the first term, they were doing good until then the Abiola with his money brought in, what's his name, Babangida. Babangida was the one who worked with IMF and World Bank that eventually destroyed Nigeria's currency, introduced austerity programs and things like that. So again, you see the chain reaction of the poor decisions of Obasanjo made when it could have conducted a good election, and the best candidate could have won, but he stage managed that election. Okay, fast forward to this current stage, 1998, when in the 90s, Abiola contested his election. I believe, obviously I was young then, but then because I grew up in a very Pan-Africanist political household, my grandfather, who was Awolowo's actually Awolowo's friend, I was in tune with politics. That's just been my upbringing. When Abiola came to the U.S. campaigning about reparations for African people globally, I knew then, I was like, oh gosh, this guy's not going to win. They're not going to let him in. And if you think about it, nothing in life is a coincidence. At the time Abiola was coming in this election, Mandela was being released. And if you look at politics at that time, we're talking about 92, 93, 94-ish. The most popular, well-known politicians on the planet then were Africans, Abiola,
No,
Mandela, and
Abiola was really very popular. I grew up.
Exactly.
I grew up in Uganda actually,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I used to hear Abiola.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
in Uganda. I'm a young guy. I'm a younger person. Until I was 26 when I traveled and came to Ghana.
Yeah.
That's where I learned who Abiola, because one of my best friends, who was like my father, he was a Nigerian. All right, so he told me about Abiola. So then I remembered what I used to hear when I was young. These people used to say, Abiola, you behave like Abiola. So whenever you behaved like a boss, like a rich person, people in our village would say, do you think that you are Abiola? Stuff like that. Yeah. So when I came and I learned a lot about Abiola, I realized that Abiola is someone really who loved Nigeria and he wanted to make a contribution.
Yes. So I was like, oh my, they might not let him, because this guy is campaigning for reparations for global African people. I was like, yeah. But and interestingly, they never allowed him. He died in prison. But throughout the time, Obasanjo had an opportunity to put his Pan-Africanism on the line, but he chose to side with the imperialists. And then when he came into office in 1999, and mind you now, Nigerian politics has always been very ideological. However, very ideological in a sense that people just didn't hop from one political party to another. There were clear ideological differences. Usually they will say the northern affiliated political parties tend to be conservative, where their conservatism really rests in independent Nigeria, no foreign base kind of thing. No external influence, right? And then the southern tend to be a little bit more social progressive, right? So that's the essence of it, but still ideological. And then 1999, and then in 2003, and then by 2003 election, when Obasanjo was the president now, he ran one of the most corrupt administration, to be frank. And then in 2000, even his election in 1999 was so terrible for him that he didn't even win his own hometown. He didn't even win his own hometown. So, and he was, and as a man with such ego, he was determined that in his election that was going to change. And this was when you started seeing political party, cross-breeding. People just happy from one political party. People would get elected on one platform, while in office they would jump from that party. And all this mess started under his watch, around 2003. And this was when the Attorney General at the time, who was, a Yoruba man like Obasanjo, was assassinated in his home inside his own bedroom. And in the end, Mr. Obasanjo managed to find a way to blame the man for his own death. Yeah, if you Google Balaige, and Balaige was one of those who actually put his life on the line as well to bring back democracy. So, and then, fast forward towards the end of his administration, he tried to extend the constitution to what he called third term, to basically perpetuate himself in office. I used to joke that Obasanjo was Putin before Putin. Even though he sold a lot of state, privatized a lot of state asset, and reached a handful of people. So basically, was essentially trying to build oligarchs. And then when he revised the constitution, a lot of people that were bribed. The Nigerian constitution obviously needed to be revised because Nigerian constitution is probably very problematic in the sense that both the executives, at the governor level and the president have immunity, both criminal immunity and civil immunity. So which means when they commit crime while in office, whether it's 4 years or 8 years, they get to have immunity. So whatever they're going to clean up, they have that period of time to clean it up. And
they immunize themselves.
again,
They immunize them from crime. The crime.
Exactly. So revising the constitution and removing that was a good thing. People wanted that off, but the constitution didn't go through. The review didn't go through because Obasanjo, as part of that, was to give himself another term, and by that time people were tired of him. They were tired of him, and then on his way out, we brought in Yaradua. Yaradua was a governor. By the time he was finished, he was a governor, and he was a younger brother to Obasanjo when Obasanjo became head of state. After Muritala was assassinated, Obasanjo became head of state. So the number 2 man to Obasanjo at the time is a man called Yaradua. In fact, Yaradua and Abiola became business partners. So so I don't know whether it's compensation for the family. I'm not even sure. But he brought his younger brother, who was a governor. He was leaving. He was his term was ending. He wasn't feeling well. He was sick. I don't know if he had cancer. I don't know if he had whatever he had. He wasn't ready to take another role as a president. And this guy couldn't even campaign for himself. Mr. Obasanjo forced himself on Nigeria, campaigned for him, and then in the process, he grabbed Jonathan to be his deputy. And then, of course, unfortunately, Mr. Yaradua died, and then Jonathan came in. With all due respect, Mr. Jonathan was not even prepared enough to be a governor of let alone be a president. He wasn't even prepared enough to be a deputy governor, let alone a president of a state in Nigeria. And
sometimes I think Jonathan was one of the worst presidents Nigeria has ever had until Buhari came. But I think Jonathan is one of the worst. One of the worst.
Yeah.
One of the worst. Very corrupt. His rule was very corrupt.
Yeah.
His presidency was really corrupt. He never contributed that much something which you can say, this is something.
Nope.
This is something that the
guy So he had no intention of being there. That was just an Obasanjo making. So again, the man, instead of allowing the free will of the people. So during that time, in 2003, Buhari contested. Even though he got a lot of votes, but because the election was so massively rigged, he didn't win. In 2007, the Chief Justice of Nigeria at the time, and this is the thing for me when I laugh at people that sees everything from a perspective of ethnicity and religion. Because when you have no argument, you blame religion, you blame ethnicity. The Chief Justice of Nigeria at the time was Buhari's classmate. He knew the election was rigged. But he still didn't literally during the because the Nigerian Constitution allows you to contest it. The Supreme Court went on vacation. They came back, and few days later they dismissed the case. They said Buhari had no case. And this, like I said, the Chief Justice at the time, he's from Northern Nigeria, Buhari's classmate, and also a Muslim. So that's the interesting thing, that you have to develop better argument than blaming things on ethnicity and religion and all this nonsense.
Yeah. So
look at people's politics.
Of all the people, sometimes I get surprised how Jonathan and Buhari and this guy Tinubu came to power, of all the smart people we have in Nigeria. So then that takes me to look at the system itself And of course, for a very long time, I've been convinced that the system which is being run on the African continent is a very wrong one, and it has to be replaced. The system has to be replaced. Of course, the question then arises of how do we replace the system, because it's this same system which is bringing these people who are looking at survival only instead of making a contribution. So you look at, like how you were talking about Obasanjo. That's how we are actually analyzing and looking at Bryce Ngwema and his visit to his reason for the visit to Uganda, because these guys are looking to survive in power and make maybe some myriad contributions,
Yeah.
but to that's how at least I've looked at him and analyzed him. Make some myriad contributions to the people, but not really structural contributions, like how you can see that somebody came like Somat Sankara and showed the people how it should be
How
done.
to do?
Oh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Magufuli came and showed us how it should be done. In 5 years, Magufuli showed us. The next generation which are coming, they can even learn from Magufuli and say, this is how it is done. This is how
Yeah.
it can be done. All
Yeah.
right. So you can see that Museveni, if he goes away after his 35 or 40 years, depending on how much he wants to be there, right now he's been there for 38 years, you can't come and learn from his rule,
There's no
because
succession. There's no succession plan.
apart from the succession plan, but there's nothing like he has done really and say,
You can
this
hold
is
on
how
to.
I can hold on this and can copy this. Because for
Yeah.
example, Magufuli came and showed us that, okay, if you want to finance projects, he built a railway platform. The railway which they are launching in Tanzania, it was built by Magufuli. All right, was financed by Magufuli's money. He put back the airline. He built a 2,000 megawatts, dam. Mind you, he never borrowed any money. So Magufuli showed us how you can get money if you become a president. All right, you have
Yeah.
to be aggressive because the money is there in our countries, but the money is being stolen by corporations, Western corporations. So
Yeah.
he took the money from them and built these, he built these things. So at least he showed you. But for example, Museveni and these people, all the who are coming, like Bryce, what he's trying to copy, he's trying to survive within the system. He's trying to survive in the system, maybe make some myriad contributions which are not really structured, that when he has gone away people can remember him. And that's how I see that even Obasanjo, I think that's how he lived. Now that he's out of power, you hear him once in a while complaining about the system, what.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly. Exactly. And
yes, I've heard him a couple of times saying that the system, the political system is not good, of course, which we know, all of us, when we are
yeah.
outside, we know that the
Yeah.
system is not good. But you had a chance within power.
You had
Why
a
didn't
chance twice.
you?
Exactly.
Yes,
And that's the thing.
you
And
had a
that's
chance.
yes. And that's why people don't listen to him anymore.
You
Because
see, so
people
you
feel
had
like,
a
oh,
chance to make things right
yeah,
for us. So why
exactly.
didn't you wage a war for
Exactly.
us? Why didn't you
Exactly.
sacrifice for us? Like in Nkrumah, he sacrificed.
Yeah.
He announced when he came to power, immediately they announced independence. Like he said, we are going to wage a war of independence.
Yeah.
We are going to wage a war of unifying Africa. We are going to wage a war of rebuilding Africa.
Yeah.
And we are going to wage a war against any enemy who stands in Africa. Nkrumah
Well,
announced it completely.
interestingly though,
He said,
interestingly though, Obasanjo was antagonistic. So I always say, as Africans, right? This generation, we have to be our ancestor. What do I mean by that? This generation has to go back and be the Olympians, the Nkurumas, the Awolowo, the Water Sisulus. We have to be them because the generation in between, they
we
wanted
lost.
to be they wanted to be white so badly. They wanted to be white so badly.
They wanted to
I don't
fit
even
in.
huh?
They
They wanted
wanted
to
to fit in.
yes, they wanted to fit in so much so they sold us out. So we have to go back to the people that preceded them. Because and that's what you saw. Obasanjo had the disrespect of the people before him. And not just him, that generation. And that generation, I always this is not based on any analysis, but this is just based on my own observation. Obviously, nothing is total. There's no 100% in anything. But I always just felt like generations of Nigerians born, or Africans, perhaps if you want to say, between 1930 and 1960, are largely responsible for the rot that we're dealing with
Problems. Yeah,
now.
absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
because they like you said, they wanted to fit in, regardless of what it is. So this new generation post 1960 had to then go back and reset. You know,
We have.
so yeah, true, Obasanjo, because he, like I said, like you said, he had two opportunities. Let's say the first time he was younger, but the second time he came after Abiola was assassinated, many assassinations that took place, and the man was just arrogant. I met him before, actually. Maybe I'm betraying my class now. I was a kid. My mother and I, we were on a flight going to London, and I met him, and we showing car. And my mother was like, "Oh yeah. This is you don't know him, blah, blah." Trying to. You would think a former statesman would see kid and be like, would be jovial. He was so dismissive of me, and I never forget that. He was so dismissive. I was like, wow, he's just an idiot. He's an asshole. I'm sorry to say, but you just, because this was a former head of state, and a citizen they're introducing their kid to you. He was just so dismissive, and that seems to be his type of person he is, right? He has a vaunted view of himself, and like you said, even though his administration second term around, he has some of the best people in there, big deal. But what was he paid off the debt, an unverifiable debt, to an organization called Paris Club, which was nothing more than socialism, upward distribution of wealth from a poor nation to a group of faceless organizations that the debt could not be verified. But we were told Obasanjo paid the debt. What were the debt used for? But anyway, so he put Jonathan in to pacify the Niger Delta people because of long running issue with because they've been shortchanged in the scheme of things, because the oil resources comes from them. And in fact, my father, and when I was a kid, my father was in the oil business, and he used to go down to Niger Delta, so he built so much good relationship with them. And whenever there was kidnapping of the oil workers, he used to be the one to go in there and negotiate, because he was good with those people. And on his retirement, he wrote document for Obasanjo and said, "This is what is happening." Obasanjo did nothing with that information. so it's the man loves to write letters. He will blame everybody else but himself. And so when he made an assessment that something is wrong with the system, a lot of people didn't listen, because it's like we've been talking about, you had the chance to fix the problem.
Yeah. So for me, these kind of heads of state, actually they are also very, very dangerous. If you're talking
Yes.
about rebuilding the African continent, actually, and in the sense of what Nkrumah envisioned and all other people like Sobukwe, we are talking about unifying the continent and rebuilding it. Of course, we're going to have a lot of challenges, but one of those challenges, which I saw, of course, we may have problems with the Arab states, the North African states, bringing them on board. Some of them may have challenge coming in, like Egypt or Morocco and all those countries, which have almost right now distanced themselves. But on top of that, we're going to have a challenge with the nationalist leaders like that, who think that, okay, at the time when they are there, they think that they know what it is, all right? And also they want to survive, right? They want to survive in the system. I say, oh, leave the system the way it is. Leave
Yeah.
the system the way it is. Let us do this. Or when we get something good for ourselves, that is it. Another time, another one will come and get something for us again. Let us leave the system the way it is and operate. People like Museveni, like that, who has built up a lot of security system, like it will be difficult to deal with such a person, that if it is not forced, to move him with force, it's going to be very, very difficult, for people like that. And so for me, when I see people like Ngwema, Bryce Ngwema of Gabon going over there, I see that kind of mentality is going to be sort of multiplied on the continent. And actually, this poses a stumbling block for us who are trying to fight for the unification of the
Yes.
continent. I don't know what, Mahlet, you did not agree with me on the assessment and in the fact that you were, looking at, France, that if he wants to stay in power, he should just go to France. Mallet, back to you.
Yeah, so no, I was just thinking beyond, really from staying power, what does he need from Museveni? Because if they want to stay in power, they have those foreign troops of the French military or whatever, the US, and being a good boy for the West and for their colonial past can guarantee them to stay in power. So I was trying to look for a reason, if there is one beyond staying power. What does he need from
No,
Uganda?
so there's this double consciousness. You see, like people like Mobutu Seseko too. He claimed that he's a Pan-Africanist. Mobutu Seseko. Even you see how he used to dress. But this is somebody
Yeah.
who, you see,
Yeah.
somebody, he even renamed the Democratic Republic of Congo and he renamed it Zaire. That Zaire reflects more of what is African. That's what he said. But this is somebody who gave the United States and the imperialist powers, they used to like him because he gave them everything which they wanted. And this is somebody who participated in the in the killing of Patrice Lumumba. So there's this double consciousness. So this shows you that to a certain extent he wanted to identify with his people, but maybe in the middle there, his desire to stay in power, he wanted to identify himself as an African, but his desire to stay in power and the trappings of power then forced him or overcame him. All right. And then he had to side with the imperialists to get this staying in power. But at the same time, he wanted to be an African. So this shows you that he is not that entirely he wanted to be a bad person, but maybe he was not that educated, that he did not understand even what this means, to be a Pan-Africanist. He did not understand what it means to be for your people and to use the power for your people. So maybe he thought that the power is just supposed to be there for you to show off. So you may find that this double consciousness also exists within a person like that, like Obiang, this guy, Bryce Ngwema, all right, that he may want to make some contribution, but he's not clear. He just came to power through the military, maybe with some guys there they brought him. Because remember, there's guys who brought him, all right? And you have to deal with them because now you have a group. Remember, in Zimbabwe, for example, the people, the ZANU PF, which brought President Mugabe, they are the same people who forced him out. All right, so you have this group. Now you have to know how to deal with this group which brought you to power. So these are all the technicalities that he came to seek advice
And,
how
and,
to
and
deal.
that's what happens when you're not for the people. You
Yeah.
have more sleepless nights because you have to worry about different interests because you have to please different interests.
Yes.
Right? But
So now,
when you are for the people, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So now that he has come to President Museveni, because Museveni has been there for a long time, is somebody who came through a military power. Remember, Museveni too came through military power in
exactly.
1986. So they are similar. He looks at him as similar. Yeah. All right. Remember, also Traore also sent some message to President Museveni. He came to do some consultation with President Museveni. And even if you look at the military guys in Mali, also they came and consulted with President Rawlings in Ghana before he died. President Rawlings died. They flew into Ghana and they made consultations with him. So they feel like, to a certain extent, they felt that President Rawlings understands them.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how Ngwema.
You remember Rawlings was I guess accused of being Sankara's mentor. Perhaps he was Sankara's mentor, even though they're about the same age, So, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so you may see that Bryce Ngwema may have that mindset that he may want to make some contribution to the people, and then he wants to deal with those interests, the various interests within the country, military, the people who brought him, and then the country itself, the foreign interests, and he doesn't want to destabilize the system. Actually, the way he looks, he doesn't really want to destabilize the system the way it is, He
No.
wants to see how he can do something and benefit the people.
Yeah.
You see, so he doesn't really, you cannot count on him for like revolutionary changes like what you
I
are
mean,
seeing.
come on. He took over from a family member.
Yeah. So you don't count on him for revolutionary changes like what.
He wasn't. I mean, and then he's already gone to France to kiss the ring.
Yes.
So,
Anyway,
yeah,
that has been the
More
conversation.
a burning question from your discussions. Like you said, Magufuli showed us in those few years how things are done without really running to IMF and World Bank. And then after now, Samia Suluhu, after she came, she borrowed a lot of money. She goes here and there. And how come a parliament members or a people that have really seen Magufuli and things done without really borrowing money, any of these institutions allow her to do so? Are people questioning? I mean, why this happens then if we have such, current examples that just happened? How this is happening? And I don't think Tanzania is the only country, but yeah.
Yeah, so President Magufuli, first of all, did not die by accident. A lot of people, believe that something was done to him to remove him from power because of his stance, of course, on COVID, of course, which COVID came out to be looked at fake even up to now. When you go and examine, researches, COVID, something was wrong. That there's something which is not right, but there's something which President Museveni said in 2003 in August that the within the governments themselves which we have, there's special interests. All right, the special interests that the imperialist system builds its interests within those particular governments. That these people will be fighting you while you are fighting, for African interests, the Pan-African interests. So Magufuli as a person, he came and found a system. Remember, he found a system which is already there. And this period, which was there for only 5 years, it was not really enough for him to clean that system completely and consolidate his state. You can see that the Chinese, Mao was there for a long time even to displace the system and establish a system. Singapore, this guy of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, 30 years before he established a system. You see, so it's difficult for you to uproot those people who are still existent there. And those are the people who were fighting against him, actually, when he was in power. So you could say that those special interests, they are still there. They were still there when he was there, and
When he
they
was
played
there,
a part
they
in
didn't
his
like.
removal.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. So
they
they got
played a
rid
part
of
in
him.
his removal. And because remember, in Nkrumah's book, in New York, this book called Class Struggle in Africa, Nkrumah identifies the interests on the global scale, on the international stage, that you have the imperialist interests. They are the masters. Okay, so of course, other people, the people who are playing on the national level, when you talk about imperialism, they don't even understand it. They don't see it. But Nkrumah understands that and teaches us and points out that on the global stage, you have the imperialist interests. These imperialist interests, they are the masters of the local representatives of imperialism. So what Nkrumah is saying is that they are continuing colonialism, but in another guise. That's why he even calls it neo-colonialism. Neo just means new colonialism, right? It's a neo-colonial system. It's a new colonial system they are bringing, that they have these representatives who look like they are for you. They look like you, but rather they are serving the other interests. That is why I say that when you go around Africa's central banks, whether in South Africa, all these governors in the various African central banks, if you examine very well, they have an attachment to the World Bank or the IMF, all these institutions which are attached to the International Monetary Fund and all that. They have either ever worked there or they studied from Western institutions which are attached to this neoliberal ideology when you examine it very well. So these people, they are deliberately put in these positions to, they are prepared over there and pushed over to achieve, to accomplish certain tasks. So once you are being removed, somebody who came almost alone, you wanted to upset the system, because this person, a person like that comes once in a while. Like in Ghana, ever since Nkrumah left, that such a person has never appeared. You see, but a person like that can come once in a while in this system and tries to upset it. When he tries to upset it, and then they eliminate him and they go back to the old system.
Yeah.
So
And that's why
that's how I look at it.
in wrapping up, to conclude, to add to that, that's why you can see the person who is the current WTO head was a former finance minister in Nigeria twice, and she was the one who orchestrated the so-called debt repayment. You know, she's a Harvard graduate. She got pulled by Obasanjo from I think World Bank. So
You see, so you see,
yeah,
yeah.
so
So some of them they do, and they are rewarded for whatever they have done in helping.
it's
Whether
called,
it's the
you know,
West.
everyday people will call it failing upwards. You know, so
Yeah. So
But
you
that
can
is
see that right
true. This is
now.
as much as the system or the ruling government is concerned because they are master, or they are under control. But we as a people, the ordinary citizen, how do you explain our character for just letting it happen,
Yeah.
and be
So
passive of it? And I'm
so
talking about now, like the Tanzanian people. You see so many revolutions around you, and you just keep quiet and let it. Like, how do we explain that character of us?
so this is society. When you read Mahlet, if you read in Nkrumah's book, philosophical consensusism, it's called consensusism, the philosophy of decolonization. It tries to show you society, and understand the forces which are existent in society. That society is always just a force, a combination of forces, unstable forces which are going up and down, right? Forces which are up and down, sideways, up and down, and stuff like that. But in those forces, there's good forces and then there's bad forces, right? So at a certain point in time, the bad forces can rise to the top and minimize the good forces. The good forces doesn't mean that they are not there. They have disappeared. They are completely not there. But it's just that the bad forces have exceeded the good ones at a certain level. All right. And of course, this is to some extent what they call dialectics. And another person, I think, called it like every society has within it the seeds of its own destruction. All right. So what he meant is that to a certain level, if there's good in society, within the good, when the good is existent, the seeds of destruction are still also existent within that. So it's up to you, the revolutionaries, to understand how to control the negative forces so that they will not rise to the top. Okay, so now the people will be there, the good ones, but they may be fearful. They look at the system and say the system is too powerful. Even in the parliament itself, you may have people who are there and they understand what is going on very well, and they look at the system and say, why don't we do the right thing? But look, these people have been divided. They are in parties. First of all, like if you come to a parliament like in Uganda or Nigeria, all these people, I don't think all these people are dumb that they don't know what is going on. Really, they really know, but they have been divided. They are on party lines. The policy, whether it is bad or good, they vote it as long as it's in their party or is on their party lines. That is parliament as it goes. And they understand that voting against it, of course, has consequences. That maybe you will not get a card. Next time you will not get a card to run on the party lines to win the election, to come back to parliament. So all these interests now are there. So what Nkrumah tries to help us to understand is, how do you now handle these? You have to, first of all, you have to recognize them, these forces that they are there. Now, how are you going to play for you with the good forces to wage a war, and then come, to the top and take control of society and bring it back and build, the African society which we desire, the unified, continent and all this. But the people will still be there. But of course, there's their own interests. There's their interests, and they will not care. Or they look at it and say, this is too much for me. I cannot tamper with these kind of forces. They are too strong for me. Who am I? You see, there's that looking down on yourself also. That who am I for me to take on these kind of forces? They are too big for me. I cannot manage them. You see, so that is the, that is there, which you have to understand, that is there. Then it takes time for maybe a group of people to rise up out of society. Like when we go to Cuba, for example, in the 1950s, that, but of course, it rises. It within the group of the middle class. Even when you read the Red Dalio's group book called the World Changing Order, it is within the middle class where normally the group which is going to bring change that rises up. The people who are built to bring that change, they normally come from middle class background. They see what is going on. They have grown in the system. They see what is wrong, but they are convinced that something new has to be done. People like, for example, Castro came from middle class. Mao Zedong, those guys came from middle class. Deng Xiaoping, but they came and saw what something is wrong with society. We have to change society, and they are convinced about their society, that our society has to go in certain direction. It has to maintain a certain level of integrity. Then it goes in a different direction. But for Magufuli alone, to change it without a group of people built around him, it was going to be very difficult. And 5 years was very small for him to build that group around himself so that they can continue on whatever he had done. That's why he was using a lot of force. You see, he was using a lot of force to implement things. People were refusing, others, he has to pull people outside and throw them out of the ports who are corrupt, who are allowing, the resources of the country to flow out, the gold and all this. You see, so he has to throw people out of the Tanzania Revenue Authority. A lot of institutions, he has to throw people out by force. And this approach also can be, of course, difficult. But if you want to do things, then you don't have another option, you don't have another way of dealing with it. So he did not have time. Now you need time for you to build a new team that is gonna maintain what you have built and continue the process. So that shows you also again that I think this speaks also to the fact that the organizations which we once considered as revolutionary organizations, like the Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania, which is a party, and ZANU PF in Zimbabwe, and then ANC, the ANC in Tanzania, it shows you that they are decayed, that these organizations are decayed, by decay, political decay. Okay, they have been corrupted now, that it is difficult even to bring them back. That's why you see even the ANC, which we spoke about here and we have analyzed, it has gone in a different direction now. It wants to survive now. It's looking for survival instead of going back to the revolutionary roots. So it's the same thing that you see, that even the party, which is Nyerere's party in Tanzania, the Chama cha Mapinduzi, is going through that. Once one person rolls out, even they beat that person because the party itself is decayed. That the people who are supposed to hold up these revolutionary approaches, they can't. They are already corrupted. They are only taking care of themselves and serving, imperialist interests. But there is that, of course, problems. These are all challenges, of course, which we have to confront.
All right, then I think we started from President Nguema, Gabon, Uganda. We touched everyone today. We have been to South Africa. Nigeria is pretty much, we dwelled in it, but all really for good reason. We thank Dejuma. Really, thank you very much for being here with us and for sharing your view. And we encourage that with others also. Whenever there is, we try to make an open session, and that you can come and contribute. Most of the people who are here every night, when myself and Kwame here, are pretty much the same people. So exactly, that means we are we have the same thinking. So we are not here really to teach anything. We also learn from you. We are, as much as what we read, that's all. But there is of course, we cannot read everything, we cannot watch everything, so there is always something to learn from others. So thank you really for your contribution, Dejuma, and we encourage others also. Osie, I have been seeing, whenever we couldn't find a name, he has been just dropping them with a fraction of second here. So I have seen, thank you very much really for your contribution. But all of you, Patricia, Ciendes, Saying this, was that a question? I'm not sure. Patricia, she said, what is the function of opposition party in the parliament? If you are saying Tanzania, I'm not sure if there's an opposition. If so, that will be, yeah, it's a topic by itself. But I don't know really, because me, I have a problem of understanding Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, what she's doing and where I can put her
No, of
categorically.
course, it's going the opposite direction of what where Magufuli was
No,
going.
that
I
is
don't.
for sure.
And
But
she just there even by accident. The fact that Magufuli died and she came in. I really don't think she was going to be the one who was going to be the next president. I doubt. I doubt.
yeah,
Yeah, I doubt she
yeah.
was going to. If Magufuli did not die, so she was.
Magufuli is in the era of like if in our time now he like the AES leaders, the Sahel states.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Pedro Gemot, yeah, Bonsu, Big Well, also here. All of you really, thank you very much. So I think we should end it here, right?
I think so too.
Opposition and the government distract the public by blaming each other while they work together to pocket the people's resources. Yeah, true. Saying this. Yeah. All right, then, Kwame, thank you very much. Cindy said Samia Suhulu is ex-UN. Oh, really? Ex-UN stuff. Yeah, she really, there's a lot of debt that she has taken since she came to power. And when you say that,
Yeah, she has Tony Blair. She has Tony Blair as her financial, economic advisor. Tony Blair is economic advisor to Sulu. So you can see where she is and where she's going. She's just going in the opposite direction of President Magufuli. But anyway, that is a topic for another day. Somebody asked, do you think she played a role in the killing of, in the death of President Magufuli? We will not say that here, but of course, many people suspect a lot of things happened. So, but we can't say that for sure here because
it
we
was
are
not
we're
a
public.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people, of course,
Three
no. A lot of people
states
know. People know
who
things
did
because people.
because of Corona, because it
No,
was a
it's not. Yeah, it was
it
just an.
was, but it was just labeled like that. It was not only
Yeah,
Magufuli, others. There were two others.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, things happened, and people are not stupid. People know what happened. But what happened. Things will come out later, maybe in 15 years, things will come out.
She banned Swahili to be taught in schools. Really, Osie?
No, she did not. Did she? She did not.
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, Mahlet, I hope that is it for us.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And join Kwame next, hopefully, I don't know if it's not too late, to give an update on the day 4 protest of Nigeria.
Okay, Mahlet.
Yeah, all right, son.
All right,
Bye bye.
have a good
Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, we don't take it for granted. So we will see you on the next one. Bye bye. Ciao, Kwame. Thank you.